from Mr. Morton's Barmy Book of Bonkers Bits.
Hello, I'm Mr. Morton and welcome to Mr. Morton's Barmy Book of Bonkers Bits. Say, are you here for your regular story? Wonderful! Well, make sure you press follow or subscribe at the end of this story and I'll write your name in the book and make sure you never miss a story. I'll even write it in ink. Makes it very official. After all, every regular helps keep this little shop ticking and the shelves beautifully stocked. And you can also browse the full shelves of stories at mrmortonsbarmybook.com. But now that you're here, say, have you ever heard the story about the change jar that couldn't sit still? No? Well, Luna lived with her dad in a small settled cottage that hummed to itself. The fridge hummed when it was thinking. The boiler hummed when it was cross. And Dad, well, he hummed whenever he couldn't find his wallet, which was quite often. On the kitchen shelf sat a glass jar full of change. It clinked when the back door banged. It clonked whenever someone put the shopping down too hard. And every afternoon, when the sun slanted through the window, the jar caught the light and sent little copper sparks skittering across the wall. Luna liked the jar. It looked useful, steady, safe. Only lately, she had started looking at it differently. Not counting, just noticing. Noticing how coins came out for bus fare, for school things, plasters, shampoo, for shoelaces when hers went all limp and loopy, and how the jar kept getting lower. Not quickly, just slowly, like a puddle shrinking in the sun. Well, one evening, Dad was making cheese on toast. He considered this one of the great arts. He always said the best way to improve cheese on toast was to add more cheese. And then, when you thought you'd reached a sensible limit, to add some more. Well, he was halfway through grating when Luna said to him, "Dad, what if you keep having to use the jar because of me?" Dad stopped grating at once. He put the grater down very carefully. Then he turned to look at her. His face had gone serious. Not cross-serious, worse. The sort of serious that made the whole kitchen listen. "Oh dear," he said softly. "You've upset the change." Luna blinked. "The what?" "The change." Dad wiped his hands, walked to the kitchen shelf, lifted the jar off with both hands and gave it a gentle shake. Clinkety, clankety, clonk. Then he put it to his ear like a seashell, as if he expected to hear the sounds of the ocean inside. And he listened. Really listened. His eyebrows twitched. He nodded once. "Oh, yes," he murmured. "I see." Luna slid off her chair. "What are they saying?" Dad sat down on the kitchen floor with the jar in his lap. Luna sat down opposite him because this was clearly no longer an ordinary cheese on toast sort of evening. Dad listened again. "Well, they're complaining about being kept still." "The coins are complaining?" "Oh, yeah, extensively." He peered into the jar. "That pound coin there says change is called change because it likes to change." "Well, that doesn't make sense." Dad looked at her over the rim of the glass. "Well, it makes perfect sense if you're a coin." He unscrewed the lid and tipped the jar onto a tea towel. Out rolled a clattering little crowd. Coppers, silvers, £1 coins looking particularly pleased with itself. A bent old 5p that had clearly lived a life. Dad pointed to the pound coin. "See that one? Chairman." Then he pointed to the bent 5p. "That one? Troublemaker." He picked up a 10p piece and held it to his ear. "Ah, this one wants bus duty." "Bus duty?" "Yeah, very solid work. Get somebody where they need to go." And he set it down back on the tea towel. Then he picked up a 20p piece. "Well, this one wants to be shampoo." Luna pulled a face. "That's not exciting." Dad returned a scandalized look. "Hair business is always exciting." He picked up another. Plasters. Another. Library sale. Another. New laces. Another. Ooh, this one says ice cream. Luna looked up, and Dad listened harder. Ice cream with sprinkles. He picked up a little copper coin, and this one would like to become one chocolate button. Just one. Well, it's a small coin, said Dad. It has modest ambitions. Soon there was a neat little row across the tea towel. Bus fare, shampoo, plasters, laces, library sale, ice cream, chocolate button. They no longer looked as if they were disappearing. They looked as if they all had jobs. Dad picked up the pound coin again and balanced it on his palm. You see, he said, change hates being trapped. And he turned the pound coin over with his thumb. Keeping it shut up in a jar too long and just starts getting odd ideas. What do you mean, odd ideas? Pirate ideas, said Dad. Dragon ideas. Buried treasure ideas. You see, the trouble with pirates, they bury all their treasures on beaches and then stomp up and down the sands shouting at seagulls because none of it ever gets to become anything useful. He tapped the little row of coins. No bus fare, no books, no biscuits, birthday cards, nothing. Luna considered this, and Dad went on. And dragons are worse. Why, dragons sit on a mountain of gold in gloomy caves getting grumpier and grumpier, while all that treasure just lies there underneath them, doing absolutely nothing. Not one plaster, not one warm scarf, not one scoop of strawberry ice cream. Very bad for the treasure. Very bad for the dragon. Probably gives them scales ache. Luna looked at the coins. They must be bored. Yeah, bored stiff, said Dad. And bored change turns miserable. He tapped the line of volunteers, but happy change likes to go out into the world and come back having done something. He pointed at the coins one at a time. Bus duty, book duty, button duty, and then he looked at Luna. And the happiest change of all is the change that gets to look after somebody. He picked up the tiny copper coin again. This one says it would be thrilled to become part of your ice cream. Then he picked up another, and this one says it's always wanted to do bus duty. He picked up another. This one would be honored to help you replace things that have been mysteriously misplaced. I don't misplace that many things. Dad held the coin to his ear. It says your cardigan would disagree. Luna looked down at her tea towel, embarrassed. She had lost a couple of cardigans. She looked at the little line of little jobs, and the jar behind them, round and glinting, and less frightening now. And then she asked very quietly, But, Dad, what if there isn't enough? Dad gathered the coins in both hands and let them tumble back into the jar, one by one. Clink, clink, clonk. He screwed the lid on and set it between them. That, he said, is Dad work. Then he tapped her on the end of her nose. Your work is growing. That is already quite a lot. Exactly, said Dad. He held the jar to his ear once more, listening to its tiny ocean, and then he nodded. The committee would like it put on record, he said, that becoming things for you is their favorite kind of changing. Luna looked at the jar. The coins caught the kitchen light and flashed. Not showing off, just pleased with themselves, now that they all had jobs. Dad got to his feet. Right, he said, cheese on toast before the cheddar gets distracted. The next morning, as Luna was putting on her coat, Dad called her back into the kitchen. He opened the jar, dipped in 2 fingers, and selected 1 silver coin and 1 copper with the air of a man choosing brave volunteers for a dangerous expedition. These, he said, placing them in her palm, have requested active service. Luna looked down. 1 for the bus, said Dad, pointing at the copper, and 1 in case conditions become chocolatey. He closed her fingers round them. They felt warm from the jar. Behind Dad, the rest of the change gave a tiny, eager clink, as though hoping their turn would come soon too. And at the door, Luna stopped. Dad? Yes? If they go out, do they come back? Dad thought seriously for a moment. Sometimes, he said. In change. In different pockets. Looking as if they've seen things. Luna nodded. So she slipped the coins into her coat pocket and went off to school. That afternoon, she came home with 1 coin left over. Dad was at the grill, peering at the cheese on toast as if it was doing something suspicious. Luna stood on a chair, unscrewed the jar, and dropped the coin back in. Clink. Then she lifted the jar to her ear, like a shell, like she listened to the ocean. And she listened. Dad turned. Well? Luna listened a little longer. Then her eyes widened. What is it? Said Dad. The 50 pence, she said. Still wants to become ice cream with sprinkles. And the coppers, she said, feel quite strongly about chocolate buttons. For a moment, Dad said nothing. Then he looked at the jar, then at Luna, then at the cheese on toast. All right, he said, but only because the committee has worked extremely hard. And off they went to the corner shop. The jar stayed on the shelf in the little humming house, catching the late light. And just as the front door clicked shut, there came from inside the tiniest, brightest little jingle. And that's the story about the change jar that couldn't sit still. I hope you liked it. If you did, why don't you leave a comment or hit subscribe and follow? Let someone else know so they can join us for more bonkers stories. But for now, I've been Mr. Morton, and you've been listening. Bye!
Thanks for joining Mr. Morton in his brilliantly barmy bonkers book. Spread the word to your wonderfully wacky friends. Subscribe for more silly stories. And remember, the world needs more magnificent madness!